maniando majimbara la baritayao. Siamo macabodara maniando majimbara la baritayao. Siamo macabodara maniando majimbara la baritayao.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is my good brother here in the temple, the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zidari Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
Zidari Enterprises would like to remind you that we will never pull a bait and switch on you for any reason. What you see is what you get. Just make sure to read your contract carefully, as you should with all contracts, because what you see there is also what you get.
I think the only bait and switch that I'd pull is just putting a Funko Pop on a hook, then casting line on the roof.
You know, that's a bit more literal than I was intending, but point stands. But
have you forget? Let me. This is the umpteenth time I have to remind everybody I am Minnesotan. Fish jokes are inevitable.
You don't have to remind me of that. I just know. I'm just like, didn't have to entertain it either.
Hey, at least it's a form of fishing that won't get me in trouble with the DNR.
It's also a form of fishing that won't get you in trouble with the FBI.
That's true. That's true. Besides, I've seen like prank channels do that with like a $20 bill on a hook. And somebody reaches to grab it, they pull it back.
Yep.
And if that sounds like it's something you'd see in Tom and Jerry, well, it probably is. But
Always is.
Look, people have no idea how many times I've stolen from Chuck Jones's shorts in order to get ideas for dungeons.
If you're gonna steal from the best.
Mm-hmm. And well, Chuck Jones is the godfather of Looney Tunes, so.
Yep.
And Axerman's asking why is the title cut off. That's probably because the title is too long for some places.
Yeah, the title in full will probably show up on the actual video page, but it's basically saying this is the finale and what chapters we're covering, which is Gear and Advancement. That's the one we're going to chapter in full or cover in full, and then Metal Maestro and the Metal Menagerie, which we're going to go over briefly, but we don't usually go deep into the GM advice column, which is the Metal Maestro chapter, or Bestiaries, which is the Metal Menagerie chapter.
And I know some might ask, why are we not covering Chapter 11 or 12? Well, Chapter 11 is the setting chapter, and usually those parts don't have a lot of stuff that we can really dissect. And Chapter 12 is a one-shot adventure. And as a general rule, I try to avoid reviewing adventures in this sense. Mostly because there is the 0.00001% that a player might stumble onto my video and get spoiled on a given adventure that their GM is running. That's also why I haven't done very many reviews of modules. I've only ever done that because I was asked.
Well, and reviewing modules it's not like we go into this looking at the mechanics, at how well the game is put together, how well it fits its own themes, does it accomplish the goals it's trying to set for itself. Going into a module doesn't really cover any of that. It just shows you how an adventure is run, and I feel like that doesn't really give a lot of analysis, because we've already analyzed the mechanics that would be running that game in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So we have covered games he's had interviews with the devs on.
Yeah.
We covered Veil of the Void. We covered, we covered Planet Bound. God, we covered Planet Bound. Yeah. Oh my God. Jeremy, come back here for your spanking.
He says modules could probably get short reviews on quality and if it uses the mechanics well. I'd still, in order to review a module to my standard, I'd have to get really close to spoilers, since I'm a holist when it comes to things I cover.
Yep, he does things holistically.
I mean, if I was doing the vloggy style like some other content creators, then maybe I could get away with it. But I don't. that was one of the things that I especially wanted to avoid when I started this channel. I didn't want reviews to be glorified vlogs because that's what I was seeing with a lot of content creators. I'd argue I still see that.
In many cases, yes. But I think we're approaching rails at this point.
Yeah. So for this, we're going to be going through gear and advancement, as mentioned before, as well as some brief notes on the Metal Maestro and Metal Menagerie chapters. Metal Maestro is basically the GM chapter, and Metal Menagerie is basically the Bestiary chapter. But starting with Chapter 8, Gear and Advancement, since I've done a good amount of talking up to this point, I will let you take the opening.
All right. So, Chapter 8, Gear and Advancement. In a game of glory and ultimate ascension, your avatars will need to grow in power and in capability. Ragnarock has 3 ways to grow your baby demigods into power toddlers and eventually graduate from the school of rock that is their journey with a degree in ass-kicking. Jack Black, is that you? Glory increases notoriety and earn additional power moves. Resonance increases the stats of gears, or of gear, I should say. And anthems forge new power moves that only the band can wield. Now, we already covered anthems in a previous video, in fact, last week's video. Anthems are just power moves that are literally the whole band.
Mm-hmm.
And they're usually made based on achievements you've performed or achievements you've gotten to. For lack of a better phrase, achievements you've achieved.
Mm-hmm.
With that, we go into glory. Glory is what everyone in Ragnarok wants. Everyone is Ragnarok once. Yeah, that's a typo. It's in every action and adventure, found in every nook and cranny of this radical world. Glory is earned by players achieving awesome things in their games, and by being true to both their tone and their position. What we've covered, tone is the god you have chosen to serve, and you get thematic things from them. Position is your class, or at least the equivalent of what most people would recognize as a class package. Mm-hmm. Avatars earn glory after play sessions, and it allows players to progress their avatar's notoriety track. Metal Maestros award glory based on pre-established questions that pertain to their story being told, as well as questions set by players during character creation. Tone and Position also had example glory questions you could create for your character, which was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Each question can award up to 1 glory if completed after a session or character arc and approved by the Metal Maestro. Some example generic glory questions they have here. Did your character manifest their righteous cause this session? Did they commit an act worthy of their tonal god? Do you have 10 dedications on the altar at the end of a session? Now, remember that the altar's maximum dedication count is equal to the average notoriety level of the party and the number of bandmates in the band. So if you have an average notoriety of 4 and 4 bandmates, it only has a maximum of 8. So you couldn't get 10 dedications on the altar in that particular situation. In which case you might ask, did you ever have 8 dedications on the altar? And then, did you spend 10 dedications in a single activation? I can see that being done for an anthem, considering how much dedication cost all the different anthem options had.
Mm-hmm.
The questions encourage players to truthfully play their role as avatars of metal and help relive some great moments in a session. If the Metal Maestro provides any additional questions, they should do so at the top of a session so players have goals in mind during their gameplay. It's really up to the Metal Maestro when a band progresses in notoriety, but we have some guidelines based on how many sessions a group of players would like to run before they see their avatars become over 9,000 level of badassery. See the Metal Maestro section on page 128 for more information. And yes, that meme was necessary. Fuck you all otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go down to how do you merge gear and leave you there, Monk. Mm-hmm. So notoriety is the direct result of players doing amazing things. It's earned through gaining glory through their tasks and deeds. Notoriety showcases how well an avatar is known in the realm of Ragnarok. As their legend grows, so will the notoriety. With more notoriety comes more power. A player's notoriety is very similar to level in other role-playing games trademark. The notoriety also determines the base number that is used in power moves that have N in their descriptions. And then resonance. As stated in the lyrics of countless songs sung by centuries worth of bards, powerful heroes wield powerful weapons, wear magnificent outfits, and possess artifacts of unspeakable energy and strength. That said, nobody wants to carry around piles of weapons, cake. I'm sure they mean cake rolls, R-O-L-L-S, but it's R-O-L-E-S. And armor, constantly checking if you're strong enough to lug this stuff around. You're demigods, for fuck's sake. Carry what you want and absorb the rest into your magnificent selves. Resonance is gathered by deconstructing the powerful and magical artifacts that are wielded by foes and fellow avatars of the realm of Ragnarok. Each item gathered will have a resonance value between 1 and 10. Narratively, resonance allows you to form and change your gear as you see fit based on what you find.
Yep. Then we get to how do you merge gear? All avatars can take gear with a resonance value and imbue its power into their own gear. However, Amp Lords have the power of making this distillation more potent, increasing the possible resonance earned. When an avatar merges a piece of found gear with their own, they earn the resonance value of their gear or a power move that is already imbued in it. Once an avatar's gear has acquired at least 10 resonance, they can increase its amplification level and increase one of its stats, attack, damage, speed, etc. by 1. What does a weapon/gear with resonance look like? Gear with resonance could be powerful artifacts of ages past, or fallen weapons of other avatars, now banished to the Grey Wastes, or the weapons and tools of other powerful denizens of the lands. Either way, once you have it, you get to absorb and reform them to shape it based on your wildest dreams. Find a cool whip after a battle and now you want to merge it with the broadsword of tears you've been carrying around? Awesome, it's a chain whip now, increasing its amplification level. The only exception is any living avatar who hasn't been permanently banished back to the sterile halls of the corporate megalith of Mundania. Their gear is still bound to their spirit and unable to be absorbed. No yoinking, folks. Which definitely makes sense, and it prevents griefing. Can you merge?
It's not very.
Good.
I was going to say it's not metal to steal from your bandmates. Any metalhead who has stolen from their bandmates has gotten their asses kicked, either proverbially or literally, usually both.
I mean, why am I suddenly reminded of the unwritten rule that anyone who spends more than 5 minutes with Eddie Van Halen wants him dead?
That wasn't my intention, but it's a good reference.
And some of you think I'm exaggerating. It's just you look at his history, and he has so many people who he's pissed off in one form or another.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, it wasn't Eddie Van Halen. It was David Lee Roth. I have to clarify. Eddie, I don't hear it. I never heard as much problem with, but but Roth, I don't have enough time to go over all of it. Then we have, can you merge different gear? Ultimately, it's up to your metal maestro. But who are we to say you can't merge a magical dagger into your breastplate with resonance? Fucking nobody, that's who. And
I don't see why you couldn't merge anything into anything else depending on where you wanted the resonance to go. Mm-hmm. It's called resonance for a reason.
Now it's going to be up to you to
resonate.
Explain. It would be up to the player to explain what the final thing is going to look like. But you should know by now that kind of thinking is part of the stock and trade of this kind of game.
Yep. Think in metal, and you will be good.
Mm-hmm. Then we have the amplification level. The basic power statistics of a piece of gear will be determined by the type of gear in question. Each type of gear has 2 stats that can be increased with amplification level. Once one of your gear has been increased by 10 resonance, it can increase one of its attributes. It was supposed to be attributes, I think, but they forgot the S. Damage, defense, speed, exposure, etc. by 1. And it basically operates on a rule of 10 throughout. For every 10 points of resonance, the amp level goes up by 1.
Now, my question is, when it says resonance needed, is that total resonance or resonance for that specific level?
I am thinking total, given that it said once one of your gear has increased by 10 resonance.
It's not specified, though.
Yeah. That's why I'm thinking it's just besides, given how light this game is when it comes to its mechanics, having it be where it's where it's 10 cumulative doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I understand that. I wish it would be a little more. Again, as always, we like things to be very concrete. We like things to not have that sort of wiggle room. It's the reason why when we've been going through the editing phases on Final Fantasy Legend Edition, I have been rewriting things so that if a rules lawyer were to ever look at it, they couldn't argue with me like the little fucking shits they are. I used to be a rules lawyer. You can't out rules lawyer a rules lawyer. You can't bullshit a bullshitter, you pieces of shit.
And well, at my physical tables, nobody tried to do the rules lawyer thing because,
Pane glass or get the fuck off the table.
Yeah, pane glass or the whole thing of don't poke the bear.
Mm-hmm.
Although one person was very clever during a Star Wars game where they said it's not wise to upset a Wookiee. And everybody else was like, understandable, have a good day.
No, you know what? I'll give someone that one. If anyone at my table ever said, let the Wookiee win, in reference to let the GM's ruling win, I'd be like, you're on my good list. Good job. Because Wookiees are insanely calm people.
But then continuing on, resonance rolls over if you have more resonance after increasing a gear's amplification level. So yeah, I'm thinking it's a rule of 10 thing.
Yeah, so if you get to amp level 2 with 20 and you have some left over, it rolls over into going towards 30.
Getting more bang for your buck with amplification is next, and I'll let you take that.
Okay. An Amp Lord of Notoriety has the chance taking found gear and getting up to double the resonance value earned from imbuing it with an avatar's gear, which is sick. To do this, an Amp Lord forms a forge performance pool and spends a dedication as a cost of a player character. For each tribute earned, the imbued gear earns another resonance. Note, an Amp Lord can only pull as much additional resonance as their notoriety. So don't go using all of your dedications on the altar to pump it up, or hand over a weapon with amplification level 9 over to an Amp Lord fresh out of the umbilical descent. Note for Metal Maestros, for a faster and more streamlined gameplay experience, you can also ignore the concept of Amp Lords using this element of their position when it comes to resonance. Instead, you can just award resonance for each item acquired. It's pretty nice. Then we have changing primal types. If a piece of found gear has a primal type, and a player wishes to have it imbued. Have imbue it is not correct. It should be have it imbued into their avatar's gear, and that should be an apostrophe S after the avatar. An Amp Lord can spend a tribute during the Forge performance pool to add that primal type instead of an additional resonance. So you could add primal damage to your weapon if you really wanted to. Which is nice, because sometimes primal damage can be really useful. Remember the 6 primal types, everybody? Ice and fire, sky and stone, shadow and metal. Then we have exposure. Avatars typically don't need to get things like weapons, horses, and other mundane things from the various towns they adventure through. They're demigods, after all. What use is coinage when you live off of the glory and deeds of your adventures? All that aside, occasionally an avatar may want a gold-plated statue of themselves in the town square. Or a specific favor, wink wink, from a lord, lady, or liege. And that is where exposure comes in. You know what? For that winky wink, I'm actually going to do this. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more, say no more. But not the kind that'll get you thrown in jail in Montania. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more. Unlike real life, an avatar can absolutely live off of exposure. They've got that right. In real life, no artist can live off of exposure. Pay your artists, people.
Mm-hmm.
Exposure is the liquid credibility that an avatar has at any given moment. It can be spent in order to I think it's supposed to be nab, but it's nap. Special favors. How would you misspell nab as nap? The P isn't even anywhere close to B on the keyboard. Purchase unique accommodations or gain special access. Once again, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more. Are we not doing phrasing anymore? It's primarily used in non-combat scenarios, but a really bold avatar can attempt to use it in combat per the Metal Maestro's discretion. You know who I think would do that most? Either Kekatari, because they're all about that precise fingering, or Shrika, because, well, glam metal.
So is phrasing just not a thing? We're not doing that anymore? Boom, both berries out.
Indeed. Exposure can even manifest itself, ooh la la, with a traveling group of denizens following the band around, attempting to garner their attention, all too happy to be caught in the extravagant misfire of their adventures. I mean, your stars, after all. It's groupies. They're just talking about groupies. I'm going to read this example because it is glorious. The king of the great necro waste is a total dickbag and won't let you and your friends fight the bone trolls in the mountains of his land unless he considers you worthy of the task. The Metal Maestro says that the band needs at least a cumulative notoriety of 5, or they can fight the king's schlubs so he can determine their worth. And then Alex's character really, really wants to explore the Museum of Ass Kicking, which is completely booked due to a special event. That sucks because they want to talk to one of the best managers in Ragnarock who happens to be attending. If Schmooze doesn't get Alex anywhere, he can always ask the Metal Maestro if spending exposure may help him in his cause. Then finally we have money in Ragnarok. Look, there are such things as Ragnabucks, and avatars use them to buy beers for each other after a battle, a cheeseburger here and there, and sometimes a copy of Heavy Metal magazine.
This is not an endorsement.
No, it's an endorsement for me. Heavy Metal magazine's great, at least from the 80s.
No, I'm saying we're not being paid to endorse Heavy Metal magazine, though I certainly will endorse some of the various forms, including the movie, and including some of the games.
Voice to text? What are you talking about, Dragon? But oh, the misspellings probably. But no, it's not an advertisement, Monk. We're not paid advertising, but we're sure as fuck endorsing Heavy Metal as a concept.
Yeah.
But this game is not about acquiring or counting pocket change, you Ebenezer Ebenezer splooge. God damn it.
Oh god, the mental images.
You want a pile of gold? You could probably get it, but money just ain't worth it, the same as exposure. And the glory you get from defeating your enemies in combat can't be bought. Blood and sweat are the real commodities in Ragnarok. Imagine how it must smell. If you really want to explore a socio-economic relationship with Ragnarok, work alongside your Metal Maestro to decide what's important to you and your game group. If your idea of metal is a bunch of accountants in corpse paint saving up to buy a yacht together, don't let us yuck your yum. Just don't write us any emails asking for info on the top performing stocks in Ragnarok. No, I'm going to say it. I don't care if the developers don't want to say it. I'm going to say it. This game is about being metal as fuck and wanting to be accountants, trying to save up for a yacht and asking about stocks makes you a Mundanian. Fuck you. Go back to Mundania and sink that yacht, you motherfuckers.
Or for that matter, go crawl around looking for torches and 5-foot rope in some dungeon.
Yeah, no, fuck that. I know they're like, hey, play it however you want, and I'm like, sure, play it however you want, but play it fucking metal. If you're gonna be an accountant at my fucking table, you're gonna leave, or I'm gonna put you through the table, because that'd be metal. fuck you. I know the devs don't want to say it because they want to make sure that the game is cool for everyone who wants to be metal, and that's awesome. I'm happy for the devs.
Mhm.
I, as someone who did not develop this game and I, as someone who wants to see it succeed on its merits, am going to say, fuck the accountant thing, fuck stocks and yachts, go do metal badassery. Okay? Okay. I'll give you the Metal Maestro start, Monk.
Mm-hmm. So, as mentioned...
Hold on. Before we do go on, Axerman says, I just wait to jam out while bathing in piles of gold. It bruising the band as the gold crushes us is a plus. That's fucking metal! That's fucking metal. Sure, accruing gold isn't very metal if you're accruing it to save up for something, but if it's part of your fucking aesthetic, hell yeah.
Yeah. So, obviously that brings us to Chapter 9, the Metal Maestro. And the first bit of it is going into the setup for it. But then we go into pacing. Pacing is all about... Go ahead.
Hold on, Monk. Remember that Rule 0 does exist, but Rule 0 in Gods of Metal Ragnarok is justingly fitting. When in doubt, just revisit the first law of Ragnarok. Fuck the rules.
Pretty much. It's just that I've seen some people try and put round pegs in square holes regarding certain games that are meant to be more arcadey. They try to put it in things like realistic passage of time. I saw somebody wanted to try and do that in a bit of a discussion on the Sword World Discord, and I'm like, why would you feel the need to put that in? Or wanting to try and do more OSR things with, like, Sword World 1.0. Which, even by the time 1.0 came along, the D&D associations were minimal.
Mm-hmm.
At least from what I've been seeing so far. Obviously, the complete edition translation isn't up yet, but it will be soon. But pacing is before I go on, I do want to read off what Axerman had said. Like, if something is too expensive, just make it a quest reward or a perk for winning band battle. Make it so the players don't need to stockpile money unless we do, the player who bit is showering everyone in gold as you jam to bragging about how you're the most rich in Ragnarok.
Like, so the big point here is that in that part where it was talking about money in Ragnarok, money to the party really doesn't mean much because you're fucking demigods of metal. You're looking for glory. You're looking for ancient magical metal shit. Flaming swords, axes that can split the goddamn mountains while lightning shoots out everywhere, a whip that makes every woman moan as you snap it. Any of these things. Heavy fucking metal. And that's what's going to be key to your advancement. This whole Ragnabucks thing is there as a background item to go, oh, hey, guys want to go get a beer? Yeah, let's go get a beer. And everybody goes and gets a beer, and it's assumed you have the Ragnabucks for that. Because you're not going to be purchasing a lot of quest or character necessary stuff. That's all going to be shit you pick up off the ground for after you've slain your foes and ripped the bones out of them, because goddamn dragon teeth make great fucking weapons. So it ain't metal to worry about the money. That's what you pay an accountant for.
Yeah. But there's three forms of pacing that the Metal Maestro chapter goes into. The first is gigs, which are single story sessions or quests for bands to embark on. Then there's tours, longer multi-narrative story arcs where players travel across the lands playing gigs, and ballads, whole campaign arc often ending with avatars becoming new gods. Pacing is often set by how many glory questions you will allow to be fulfilled at the end of a session. The more glory awarded, the faster players will increase in notoriety and thus become stronger and more famous in the world. And then we have glory and advancement, where it talks about the ways to do that kind of thing. Glory is determined by formulating some personal questions for each avatar and a couple for the band as a whole. While the personal rewards might vary slightly, the band rewards are the same for everyone involved and present for that session or story arc. It can be as simple as, did you further the glory of Calamity, your god? Or as specific as, did you, Cathusius, I think that's how you get that, face your inner demons and the truth of who you strive to be as the best guitarist in the city of Hellbent Hamlet? Or did you find your missing bandmate? It may be helpful for you to formulate these questions with your avatars before the session or story arc so that everyone is clear on the goals of the individual characters. If something is a secret, take it to a side room and talk about it beforehand. It's basically saying that it's a bit more vital to have a session 0 for this game in particular.
And not just a session 0. These questions are going to change session by session.
Mm-hmm.
At least some of them will. Something like, did you find your missing bandmate, is definitely not going to apply every session. Or, once you've faced your inner demons and the truth of who you strive to be, well, that question's going to change because you've either done it or you haven't, and either you keep it because you've done it, or you won't because you keep it because you haven't finished it, or you discard it because you've done it. You know the truth of who you are. So questions where it suggests that at the top of a session, you maybe plot out both some band-wide questions and personal questions for each avatar. It sounds like good guidance, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. So then we have notoriety per player. So short campaign, 5 glory per player to increase notoriety. Standard campaigns, 10 glory. And epic campaigns, 20 glory.
I think that's an artifact of previous edits, because I'm thinking that they mean gigs, tours, and ballads there.
Mm-hmm. Probably. Now, as far as glory question and notoriety earned, questions for avatars, 1 glory each. Position. Pose a question to your players that highlights their adventure and the use of their powers in connection to their position, their chosen path, and role. Did the avatar advance and use their connection to their position or work against it? If they stayed true to their position as the Metal Maestro and they see it, reward them with 1 glory. If they were, for whatever reason, acting contrary to those tenets and that nature, do not reward them with this glory, but give them additional consideration during the story rewards.
I'd like to point out that the word there would not be tenants. Those are people who live in housing. That would be tenets. Denets.
Yep.
That's funny.
Tone. Pose a question to your players that highlights their adventure and the use of their powers in connection to their tone, their god. Did the avatar advance their connection to their god or work against? If they stayed true to their position, same as before, reward with 1 glory. If true
that's a typo, because they copied from above that,
yeah.
And that should say if they stayed true to their tone.
Mm-hmm. Then general questions about the band. Questions for the band about the story, 3 glory each. We have story. Pose a question to the avatars that highlights the quests, adventures, and encounters that were present in the adventure. Did they, as the Metal Maestro and they see it, fulfill their roles within the story? Did they complete the task or solve a problem that was laid before them by the Metal Maestro? Did they acquire greater knowledge or greater power? Did they portray their avatars in a consistent manner? Reward all avatars with the same amount based on the judgment of the Metal Maestro. If they didn't complete the chapter of the campaign that was undertaken, reserve the reward for a later date. While you can reward other glory at the end of each session, these larger rewards are for the accomplishment of story objectives. And going on hiatus, 2 glory each. Mundania. Did your avatar face the Grey Wastes and return to Ragnarok to continue their adventure? If so, ask the avatars a question that highlights their struggle, even if they gain strikes on their permanent record. Was the action heroic and epic? The more you lose, the more this reward should be increased. If the avatar in question performed well in this battle to return to Ragnarok, gift them with up to 2 glory.
Now, that's actually some really good stuff about what glory questions should be like and how they should award stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. And of course, we have all the example questions from earlier as well. You can tie the two together and get a lot done. But with that, we move on to enemy activations. It talks about how an enemy's turn order and turn economy is, action economy. Enemies can do a basic thing, a cool thing, a feedback ability, and then they can adjust their tempo and relocate. And they have to adjust their tempo to relocate.
Mm-hmm. Then we have the idea of basic feedback abilities.
Yep, feedback ability. I'm not going to go into details about these abilities, but the way a feedback ability works is that in order for an enemy to use it, they have to consume feedback that is already on an avatar, which means your feedback track goes down. You actually lose feedback as enemies eat it to attack with it. That feels kind of like the morale tokens in Cloudbreaker a bit. Consuming something that is actively detrimental to the players or party in order to use an ability, thus making it easier for the party in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hold on a minute.
No problem. He probably wants me to filibuster just a little bit. But the concept I was getting at here, that's a nice one. Time to make a ballad about how even as I burn to ashes, my legend will overshadow even the most legendary item in your treasure hoard, dragon. Very nice. Axterman gets it. That's metal as fuck. But the concept of the enemies using a resource that is detrimental to a party member or the party as a whole in order to use good abilities for them, but also reduce that particular threat to you, is a really nice system that can award risk and reward gameplay, which, as everybody knows, Monk and I love risk versus reward gameplay. It gives incentive for people to do crazy, insane shit that they just thought of in order to do badassery. And it prevents, in a lot of ways, what we call the rainy day paradox, or what I like to call the too good to use list. I got that one from H.C. Bailey, I'll be perfectly honest. This is the rainy day paradox, is the idea that you have a limited resource that is somewhat useful or powerful. Not necessarily just kind of generic, but it's actually got nice amounts of impact. So you hoard it and you wait on it. You're like, I need this for when things get really bad. And then you never use it. There are a lot of games that have this issue. You see in the world's most litigious role-playing game, you see this happen all the time with wizards and sorcerers and anything else that uses spell slots. If it's someone who can afford to throw their spell slots around willy-nilly because the spells don't really matter, Paladin and Smite, then you'll see them use up their spell slots constantly. But if it's something like a wizard, they're gonna hoard their spell slots until they think it's really necessary. And sometimes this ends up with their spell slots lasting until the next long rest, and then you didn't cast any spells. But on the flip side, they also have no real way to restore spell slots except for a long rest. So if you get someone who's willing to use their resources, then they might run out too quick. That's why that rainy day paradox exists. When you have this give and take where you can throw out the risk to get feedback, but then the enemy consumes that feedback from you to do stuff, you may have more wiggle room to do the riskier stuff. Hey, no, You know what, Dragon? You just made his ballad even better. Remember, distortion on vocals and guitar is badass heavy metal shit. You 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 assisted in your own demise, Dragon. But when we've seen this sort of give and take of these resources, it allows people to not worry so much about, oh my god, I might need this 3 encounters from now, because they're like, okay, I can do this, and then I can reduce this a little bit in this battle by doing some other stuff, and then I could do some more of this, and it leads to altogether more fun gameplay in my personal experience. As for the too good to use list or too good to use club, that comes from the like I said, from HC Bailey, and it refers to things like megalixirs in Final Fantasy, because who uses a megalixir unless they're on the final fucking boss? I've never used a megalixir in a Final Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Damn it, Axerman, you're right. You know, throwing a big block party might get you seen by the executors, though. Be careful. You're harming the status quo. They might get on to you. You might get a permanent mark on your record. Oh no. But like I said, who uses megalixirs in Final Fantasy? Unless they're using it for a cheese strat or something else of that matter. Most people will have a stack of megalixirs that they've never used once they reach the end of a Final Fantasy. And that's where the Too Good to Use Club comes from. Mm-hmm. Additionally, though, I see the next section we're having is the role of Mundania in Ragnarock, and we're probably not going to go into detail about it because we've already covered what Mundania is. Mundania is a place that seeks to make everything boring and the same. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And so they want everything to just be boring, the same, and regulated. Exactly.
But then we do
I'd
have...
use Megalixir more if I knew how many were in the game, where I just got over my complex about the usage. See? Everybody's like, oh, I better stock up because I don't know when it's going to be useful. But then it's never useful because you're like fighting the most defensive battle ever. And the only time you'll use it is like on the final boss or on a super boss that's hidden, so that you can so that you don't die and you can finish the fight without having to go back to your last save and start over from zero. And in many Final Fantasy games, megalixirs aren't limited. Like, sure, there's a bunch of treasure chests and those are limited, but there are enemies that will drop it or you can steal it from. And there are enemies that you can encounter regularly in later areas. I remember stealing my way to 99 megalixirs at one point just for the fact that I could, and then using them as judiciously as possible wherever I was in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Dragon, you took that one inspiration for what your mundane should do and ran with it. You wanted to be the Hank Hill of Ragnarok.
But
yeah.
Then, after the whole role of Mundania, we have creating a new god. Domain, choose 2 or 3 subdomains from the lists in Chapter 2. Heavy metal personification, choose a preferred subgenre. So then there's a GM note. This may be any musical genre that you prefer. It need not strictly be heavy metal. Remember, in Gods of Metal Ragnarok, metal is a lifestyle and a symbol of passion and energy. Though we have certainly provided you with plenty of encouragement to go in a metal direction, your choice doesn't have to be prove particularly headbangy or guitar thrashy.
Oh god, Monk's going to create a new god of electro swing and jazz. I'm not wrong.
I really need... One of these days I need to do a watch party for Blue Giant. Let's see. Immediate benefit, +1 to 2 skills of your choice. Flaw. Choose one of the available flaws and feel free to flavor them in a way that gives you the most compelling roleplay experience. Once you've chosen a tone, apply any tone benefits available and then choose your position. see, and then we have balancing encounters, which I think is meant to be their way of doing kind of CR. Because balancing an encounter with monsters is based on a simple formula taking into account 3 elements: number of players, highest notoriety, highest damage. We recommend adding all of these numbers together and then having the total meat track of the encounter be based on the combination of these numbers modified for the difficulty listed below. Simple times 1, challenging times 2, difficult times 3. I actually don't mind that kind of setup. It worked. It makes a lot more sense than the assumptions made with CR.
Yeah, and the example here actually shows that. Christian wants to build an encounter for his player group. It's a band of 4, whose highest notoriety is 3, and the highest damage in the party is also 3, adding up to 10. Christian decides he wants a challenging encounter, so he begins choosing foes, no enemy avatars, that have a total meat track of 20. He picks 2 skeleton warriors, 5 meat each, and 10 skeletons, 1 meat each. He's ready to rock. That is fucking great. That guidance right there, we love to see it.
Mm-hmm. See, then we have resonance and a recommendation on how to distribute it. From weakest to low, it's suggested that resonance should be distributed based on the tier of enemies. Schlub is 1, Horde is 2, Solo is 3, Elite is 4, and Boss is 5.
Exerman asks, what kind of new god would I need to make for the Metal Gear Rising soundtrack? You'd have to make multiple new gods.
One, you'd probably have to do multiple new gods, and 2, that's gonna be a you problem to answer, not a me problem. Because while I can give an answer, it is my answer based on my interpretation. But that may not be what you'd want to do for your hypothetical character.
I would definitely want to make a new god based on Raiden, though, if I'm going to go that way.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically the Raiden that fights Armstrong, though, because this is not my sword.
But let's see. After that, we have the Metal Menagerie, which, like I said, is the bestiary. And it goes a little bit further into the different types of enemies. Some we've already covered, like Schlub, Horde, Solo.
Solos we didn't see earlier, but they're here now.
Yeah.
I'd like to just point out I think we should go through the bullet points on each of these enemy types.
So, and of course noting all monsters can do the following basic things: relocate, issue commands, and use an item.
Yep. But starting with Schlub, all Schlubs fight alone. They activate once per round, are extremely weak, and when defeated, grant 1 resonance.
Mm-hmm. Then
with hordes.
Yep, hordes.
We get fighting in groups, typically large ones. They activate once per round, regardless of the number of enemies in the horde. Hordes are made up of extremely weak enemies who typically die with a single hit. The horde's health is represented by the number of foes in the group. Each individual foe in the hordes typically has 1 or more hits on their meat track, depending on the size of the horde. And then when defeated, grant 2 resonance.
Mm-hmm.
With solos, they activate once per round. They have abilities and power moves that they can leverage against an avatar. They have more than 1 hit on their meat track, and when defeated, they grant 3 resonance. And so solos are starting to get to be beefier single combat enemies, it looks like. Elites activate twice per round, have multiple abilities and power moves that can be used against an avatar, have more than 5 hits on their meat track, and when defeated, grant 4 resonance. Bosses activate several times per round based on highest notoriety, have a slew of abilities and power moves that can be used against an avatar, have more than 7 health, and grant 5 resonance. And then finally, legendaries. They activate every round in addition to other activations indicated in the entry. So they activate every time.
Mm-hmm.
Have a smorgasbord. That is abilities and feedback moves that can be used against an avatar. Have more than 10 hits on their meat track, and when defeated, grant 10 resonance. Wow.
Yeah, legendary is clearly meant for those hidden bosses.
Or fighting other avatar type enemies, fighting other demigods.
Mm-hmm. Then we have a breakdown of enemy entries, speed, number of zones they can relocate, tolerance, how much damage that enemy reduces due to toughness, meat track, self-explanatory, basic thing, they can do one of these per activation, cool thing, they can do one of these per activation, and feedback moves, which we've already talked about. And feedback moves can be used once per activation, if there's feedback available to be drained.
Yep. If there's none, a feedback move doesn't have anything to power.
Mm-hmm. And then we have a few examples of enemies at each tier.
Hey Monk, I found the lost souls of the game.
The flying demon eyeball cloud.
Yeah, the Eilings.
Yeah, that would fit. Although it is worth noting that they are one example of having a primal energy type.
Air/lightning.
Mm-hmm.
I like the art of the mongrel dragons. It's derpy and I love it.
Mm-hmm. That's something I could see a plush being made of.
I could see a plush being made of the minor elementals as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I definitely see stone with the eyeball in the arm. I think the skeleton guy is shadow, and I'm pretty sure the skull that's on fire is, well, fire.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
there's a solo called Suck You Bitches.
Because of course there is.
I love this. These names are inventive, and there's some really good art, like the cryptid monster, the Thrasher Beast.
Mm-hmm.
That's a solo, but that looks like it'd actually be proper challenging to a low notoriety group.
Yep. And one amusing example when it comes to the elite would be the Metallicorn, glorious metal unicorn.
And that picture is great.
Yep. Kind of reminds me of Thunder Horse.
I could see it.
And of course, its feedback move is Majestic Pose.
I gotta read this out. Every living creature within a zone must make a feelings performance pool roll or become confused and unable to do anything other than compose ballads, poems, or interpretive dances in a vain attempt to capture the essence of the perfect being before them. Roll a legend smithing performance pool. If successful, remove all feedback, but also remove that same amount of meat from the meat track. From its own meat track?
Probably from the avatars, because otherwise that doesn't make sense.
But that doesn't make sense with the avatars either, because if there's over 10 feedback on the field, they die, all of them, every avatar.
Mm-hmm.
I would want more clarification on whether that means its own feed track or someone else's. I love that there's a solo named Radraptor, cool dude Velociraptor. But then we have a boss called Ragnasaurus Rex.
Mm-hmm. And we also have a legendary called K-Pop, the multi-headed mother of monsters. And I want to read this. I want to read this off. Cormungus Pulvitor is the last of the great dragons, known as K-pop to jerks who like stupid nicknames. This massive winged terror has nested deep in the bowels of Ragnarok for many centuries, and only recently has emerged to spread terror and death wherever she goes. It is basically Ragnarok's version of Tiamat.
Especially considering her feedback move is called Baby Mama.
Mm-hmm. So an unholy mixture of Tiamat and Echidna.
If she's an unholy mixture of Tiamat and Echidna, let's just call her what she actually is. Shub Nigurath, the thousand-eyed mother of the Black Forest.
I could see it. Oh, then after that we have a bit of description on the native denizens of Ragnarok.
Well, hold on. I do want to point out that one of the boss characters is named Gary Smith, Harbinger of Khaki and Regional Assistant Manager. The horror known as Gary Smith is a folktale told to many little headbangers before bed to keep them from being boring or basic. These children's tales are often vague in the appearance of this nightmare, but there are some commonalities that scholars have found within the stories, and some evidence has led many to believe that these simple bedtime tales may hold more truth than any thought possible. For the executors of Mundania are not unaware of the chaotic and uncontrollable realm of Ragnarok. Upper management has drawn the calculating gaze upon the aberration of what the Cord has created, and seek to see the silence succeed in the destruction of all of Ragnarok. While their powers are extremely limited, they are not without the means to send emissaries into the storm of chaos to seek out further knowledge, to expand the spread of the silence, and to hunt down problematic individuals. Strategy: Gary Smith is unstoppable. His features are forgettable and so plain that no one can seem to describe him accurately. Horn-rimmed glasses and penny loafers are typically included, but in different tales, cardigans, polo shirts, and Windsor knotted neckties are mentioned. But in all accounts, Gary is wearing khaki pants, perfectly pressed and fitted. And he can teleport, Monk. Speed 10 teleportation. His primal energy type is the Void. He has 2 feedback moves. One called Benefits Package. Reduce the band's feedback by up to 10, heal Gary for 1 damage per feedback.
Yep.
Fucking
so he's
great.
The Smoking Man.
I think he's worse than the Smoking Man in this case, Monk. Even the Smoking Man didn't want to kill all the things that the FBI was studying in the X-Files. He didn't even want to kill the FBI.
So he's the G-Man?
Would that make Gordon Freeman an avatar under the G-Man's control?
I guess.
I think we'll just call him what he is, Gary Smith.
Mm-hmm. That being said, even though there's a bit of description on different denizens, because of the way Ragnarok is set up, I think you could have just about any sort of races that you'd see and would expect to see in heavy metal fantasy fit. Which leads me to there's one particular character in anime who fits way too well, as well as his quote unquote entourage, who fits way too well, that I've talked about before. Dark Schneider. As well as his kings. All of them would fit as avatars.
Yep.
And I could argue that's played straight. It played somewhat straight in the story of Bastard, but given that the anime is currently in circulation, I'm going to hold off on that.
Yeah. Even though it isn't really spoilers because, embargo's over.
Embargo's over for the manga, but but since since the anime is in circulation, I'd like to hold off on that for at least a little bit. But one particular question that was at the back of my mind is when it came to the faction leaders in Brutal Legend. Who do you suppose would be the best fit when it came to what particular gods they serve?
You mean which of the 6 main? I assume we're going to reduce it to the 6 main, correct?
Yeah, we're not going to use the new gods for this. So first of course, being Eddie Riggs.
Diomedes.
Yeah, I could see Diomedes. Ophelia.
Uh,
Specifically Ophelia when
after
she becomes drowned.
Calamity.
All right. What about the Halfords, Lars and Lita?
Lars and Lita Halford.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on. I only remember 3 of the actual factions in Brutal Legend. The 3 main factions.
I think most of the Ironhead faction would count as Diomedes.
No, Lars Halford would be Shrika for sure. Mm-hmm. Look at him.
Fair.
And in that case, Lita, from what she looks like, would actually be Aznubaba.
Mm-hmm. What about the Killmaster?
The Killmeister? As in...
Who's...
No, I'm not wrong because, we all know who he actually is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lemmy Kilmister?
Yep.
I mean, just, it's Motorhead, Monk. Who else would it be?
Fair. And in the same vein, the Baron.
I mean, that's... Everybody knows who that's... Right? Everybody knows that the Baron is Rob Halford, right? Mm-hmm. From Judas Priest, right? Everybody knows this, right?
Yep.
I mean, all of these technically fit under Diomedes. The only reason that Lars and Lita Halford are different is because their character designs are so different.
What about Lion White?
Lion White.
Shrika?
I mean... Yeah...
Oh. Of course, Diviculus.
I mean, Diviculus is part of Tainted Coil, and Tainted Coil is supposed to be, like, industrial metal, or alternative metal.
Mm-hmm.
So... I mean... I just... with only 6 gods to choose from, who would you put in like industrial and alternative metal under? More Oznubaba?
Um, Oznubaba. The thing is, I feel like industrial and alter are a bit on the broad end of things. I think they'd end up having to be classified as new gods. Because I'm trying to.
Maybe, but looking at the tainted coil, if we
Mhm.
look at the actual tainted coil,
I would
if we
say
look at
Aznubaba because of
the
some
way
of the
they
things in
look,
the not just the way they look, but why they dress that way.
because it's inspired by Hellraiser Monk,
Yeah, in
and it's
universe, they're ashamed of their true appearance and are
and are
basically
punishing themselves.
yeah, they're wearing that as a form of eternal penance. Oh, and because of that, it's I mean maybe Calamity, but I'm not 100% on that.
I'm placing tainted coil is a thing, you know.
Hmm. But that being said, I think that more or less covers everything that we were going to cover when it comes to Gods of Metal Ragnarok. So I think this is as good a time as any to give our final thoughts.
All right. Um, I know that I've worn my criticisms on my sleeve in previous videos, and so I think those criticisms still stand, as we haven't received any errata or clarification. But beyond those criticisms, which are few and far between, I'll be honest, this game knows what it is, knows how it wants to achieve its goals, and is absolutely geared toward making everyone feel as badass as possible. Uh, typos are typos, but the game itself has the direction needed to really put together a solid game where you can do one shots galore or long form content, which is necessary for a game about metal. You need to be able to do the small gigs and the big ballads, so it's all there for you.
Hmm.
It's actually, I don't really I have so much positive to say about this game, and you can hear it all in previous episodes, because honestly I don't need to get into it again. But its identity, its art style, the tone that they have in the book, all of it just fits together for this magnificent whole that I think anybody who likes heavy metal should want to own this game.
And thank you for the gift subs, Brian. So whoever's enjoying that, hope they enjoy the ad-free viewing. Let me see. Let me see. So both Nocot and Sand got a tier 1 sub.
Yep.
So thank you for doing that, Brian.
Thanks there, Pork Chop. I'll enjoy it.
But when it comes to my take, I really much like with you, there's not a whole lot that I have when it comes to criticism. The closest I can come up with is some of the typos, some of the artifacting, um, and just some of that bit of roughness. That's really all. That's really all that I can think of.
My biggest criticism was meat track reducing to 0 immediately gives you a permanent strike on your record.
Yeah, that kind of thing of that sort of what I like to call countdown mechanics is generally something I'm not a big fan of. I mean, one could say that this is akin to death saves and more litigious role-playing games, but you don't have to worry about failed death saves after you're no longer dying.
Yep. Going back to Mundania and failing your death save and getting permanent strikes makes sense. But once you get out and come back to Ragnarok, I think if I were going to play it, I'd be like, permanent strikes only count while you're in Mundania, and once you're back in Ragnarok, they all fall off your record, and you have to try and get back from Mundania without building up 3 permanent strikes to begin with.
Mm-hmm. If only because it makes it. I mean, I can understand the intent of the permanent strike thing. Making it so that getting sent back to Mundania is dangerous. But given how feedback works, I could only go with that with how feedback and how the meat track works. I could only really go with that if getting thrown back in Mundania was harder.
Yeah. Well, going on hiatus due to feedback, you don't get that immediate permanent strike on your record. You have to do all those things to try and bring your PEP down, or and then try and roll over it so that you can get back to Ragnarok. And sometimes if you fail it enough times, you'll get a permanent strike instead. But it was the real thing that stuck in my craw was if your meat track went to 0, you were forcefully thrown back to Mundania. And because the act that threw you back was so traumatic, you were immediately flagged by the executors and given a permanent strike right then and there. That's like double dipping to me.
Mm-hmm. But with that said, that is going to do the approach that if I were to grade this in my usual manner, Gods of Metal Ragnarok gets a stamp of strongly recommended. Even if metal is not your thing, you cannot deny the fact that this is a game that is wearing its identity on its sleeve and is unashamed of that. And that is always commendable.
And it's also got enough, more than enough guidance, with a couple of small clarifications here and there that I think could benefit it more. That this is a game that a newbie could pick up and be playing pretty well. We love to see that sort of thing.
Yep. So, like I said, that will do it for this particular episode. I know it's been a while since there's been any updates with Ragnarok, and Hunters Entertainment is working on other things. But I do hope to see some custom stuff, and maybe there is in the Discord. I haven't been in there. I would certainly be disappointed if I don't see a bunch of new Metal Gods entries in there.
I bet there are a ton.
Yeah.
In fact, if there's a section dedicated to Gods of Metal Ragnarok in the Hunters Entertainment Discord, there's probably a channel just for new gods.
Mm-hmm. Also, I love what Brian had to say here. It's not wearing it on its sleeve. It ripped its sleeves off and got it tattooed on its arm. Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, it's wearing it. It's wearing it on its sleeves. Those are called sleeve tattoos for a reason.
Mm-hmm. That being said, that wraps up this particular season. This is definitely one of the shorter seasons we've had in a while. Not that I'm complaining.
Not that I'm complaining after fucking Planet Bound. Again, Jeremy, get your ass in here at some point.
He'll be back. But
better. Next
week we are going to be doing a one-shot overview of Fallen Gods. Which seems a bit amusing given that we're talking about demigods, and we'll be going further with what's coming. And after that, we will be covering Gubat Banwa as our next major season, which is a project that I have had in the back burner of wanting to cover for about 2 years now. It's just that it got updated very frequently, so when I was writing something for it, then an update would come that would make my writing kind of outdated. So I'd have to restart from scratch, and after about 4 or 5 times of redoing the script for it, I was like, fuck this.
And also, if anyone gets on our cases about pronunciation for Gubat Banwa, we don't speak Tagalog, so fuck off.
Mm-hmm.
Although Zero speaks Tagalog, he's part Filipino, so
Yeah, so maybe it's gonna be harder to get on us for anyone to get on us about that when we're dealing with fictitious names.
yeah, true.
But if there's any insights that he can give on pronunciation tips, I'll certainly take that.
I don't know how fluent he is. He is full on American.
Mm-hmm.
Might be better to ask his mom for help.
I can always ask Mel if she could help me out.
Or Homer.
Mm-hmm. And incidentally, the guy I will note a couple things. This is one case where I technically didn't back it on Kickstarter because the Kickstarter was for a print run of the game, even though I already bought it on itch when it was in early access. And
I'd still count it.
yeah. And the creator I have had on the show in the past, but not for this project. I had him on for Karen Dune, which was a PBTA project that is leaning into a similar mythology. Gubat Banwa is well, he's outright stated one of his big inspirations was D&D 4th edition. And he submitted
edition
it for the 4F jam on itch.
Yeah. Once again, the edition that, as Monk loves to say, we're supposed to hate, but the check never cleared.
Mm-hmm. So with that said, that I do want to send my sincere thanks to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come all the way to my temple and enjoy the madness that happens around here. And there will be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody!